So to get started, today is about selling condos in Colorado, new development and probate. And so today with selling condos in Colorado, some of the items that to review when you give a buyer or you're going to be asking about certain items, I always take a look at the HOA documents. And again, if you're savvy and you've closed several transactions, you know this like the back of your hand, but I just want to reiterate for the beginner, these are the things that I look out for right off the bat. So sometimes these HOA docs will be in a home book or a copy left at the property by the listing agent. Online documents and MLS, typically they will be there, or you need to obtain them from the title company or the HOA directly. A lot of times I'll have to ask my sellers to access them. Some of the HOAs will charge a fee if we order it as the real estate broker and or if the title company orders it. Yet if the homeowner themselves actually go into the portal, they can order it and they're not charged a fee. So if you can get your sellers on board and have them help you out with this, it certainly makes it a lot easier, and you don't have to spend additional dollars. So in the HOA, or you'll typically get a section of covenants, conditions, and restrictions, what we call CC&Rs, sometimes referred to as the bylaws. These are the rules and the property limitations of a planned community neighborhood. Those are always very important to review. We also can ask the HOA or the management companies, what's the owner occupied to non-owner occupied ratio? And we need to make sure that we double check this with our lenders. For example, right now I have a buyer that is wanting to go in and purchase a townhome, and he's wanting to buy it as an investor, yet he's going to move into the property just because of his financial portfolio. And yet we're not going to be able to submit an offer on the property because the actual townhome complex has already reached its 35% ratio of non-owner occupieds to owner occupied. So keep that in mind. That is something that we need to take a look at when we're selling attached dwellings, condos, townhomes, what have you. Also, you want to ask, is the condo part of a master plan development? Are there more than one HOA? For example, the neighborhood that I've lived in for a long time, Water Valley in Windsor, we have two HOAs. We have the master plan development HOA that when folks are paying for that, it takes care of the exterior maintenance of the neighborhood itself. So all the big, huge signs that actually indicate this is the neighborhood, all the flowers, all the green belts, what have you around there. And then within that master plan development, there are sub HOAs, depending on which condominium complex somebody is living in. They'll have their own little maybe courtyard areas, their own little cul-de-sac areas. One of them, again, over in Water Valley, is a master plan development, has the kind of the decks, or it's kind of like a pier walk along the lake. And so the HOAs, obviously, in that section of Water Valley are going to be much higher than somewhere else in the other part of the development. So keep in mind, you need to take a look out and see, are there multiple HOAs in that area? And are there shared utilities? Selling a property up in Loveland, and all of the utilities are all metered. And yet, so those are paid through the HOA directly. And so sometimes master plan developments or attached dwellings will have separate utilities. Some of them, maybe the water is all included in the HOA payment, and then the actual owner and or tenant would just make sure that they have electric, cable, what have you. So you want to double check for shared utilities. Are there shared amenities? Laundry room, pool, tennis court, clubhouse. Want to ask about those. Again, for those of you that have been on my Colorado connection, you heard about the snafu with one of the buyers I was working with, that they closed the pool this year because of COVID restrictions and also liability. So they decided that they were going to just close it, and they don't know for sure if they're going to be opening it next year. this was a major issue for this particular buyer. She said, wait a second, I have a teenage daughter. I'm wanting to buy this condo so that I can actually have a swimming pool, tennis court, clubhouse to utilize. And if they've closed it down through the condominium complex, she wasn't maybe going to be interested in purchasing that property. And actually, we did end up terminating under the terms of the title and HOA document review deadline. Insurance. We would like to know, what does the HOA insurance cover? I have a past client of mine that owns a condo and the interior of it was just burned. And she's calling and asking me, so does the HOA insurance cover this, Amber, or is it just is the interior covered by the buyer's or the tenant's own personal contents insurance? So we want to make sure, what does it cover? Typically, it will cover up into the inside walls. We'll cover it up to the drywall state. Electrical sometimes is tricky. You need to make sure that we know for sure. Is the electrical covered under that master hazard insurance, or is that something that needs to be covered separately in a separate insurance coverage policy? The other thing we want to find out is lawn care, exterior maintenance, and trash. I kind of touched on that a little bit earlier, but yeah, a lot of times in a multifamily development, everybody will have the same trash provider so that it doesn't get inundated with all different trash companies rolling through those subdivisions and the multifamily areas as well. And cluster mailboxes, same thing. So the condos and multi-unit buildings, there are two different ways that you can actually write a contract on this. So some of them you can go ahead and just use the buy-sell real estate contract for residential, and it will go through and it will ask certain things like, are there parking facilities included with the property, storage facilities, who pays for the fees for the issuance of the association status letter? That's always a key factor that you want to answer. I typically will say, and we'll go through this in the contracts course, but I typically say that the status of the HOA, I believe, is the seller's responsibility to provide to the buyer. And then once the buyer has taken over ownership, now they're the new owner, it's in their best interest to have their name on that HOA doc. So I always say that they are the ones that will pay for the record change fees. Okay. And which associations are charging that transfer fee? Again, is it the master or the individual HOA, and are they charging, and what is that? And who pays any association special assessments prior to closing? Want to be sure and ask that. Typically, again, I would say that was the seller, unless it's a huge special taxing district and there's it's slated to have a new school come into the area. It might be a large special assessment, and so that may be passed on to the new owner after closing. So you just want to be sure and ask those questions. Are there any unpaid assessments? You want to find out if they're unpaid. That's okay. If they're unpaid, we want to make sure, what's happening with those unpaid assessments. Thank you. Again, you can also use the Colorado contract to buy and sell real estate income residential contract. Typically, that's for 1 to 4 units or larger than 4 units. And in this, again, I just helped some clients sell a daycare, and the actual business was sold separately, but the commercial building was sold under a multi-unit building. So we had lots of these disclosures, inspections, due diligence questions that were needing to be asked. Again, are there operation and management contracts? Are they required for this if somebody comes in and purchases these and is going to be putting in a different business? Are property tax bills required? How many years have been provided? Are construction plans required? Again, I don't know why that has the plural constructions on there. Again, if somebody's going to be doing any FF&E for their tenants, furniture, fixture, and equipment, will you need to submit those plans to the HOA? Are operating statements required? How many years of the operating statements to be provided? Are lease documents required? Again, some of those are going to be asked, I think, more importantly for the lender that may be coming in and providing the financing for the new buyer. We want to take a look at the leases. Are there a schedule, is there a schedule of uncompleted work that's required? Like, were they going to go in and rip out carpeting in the area, or, who's doing what? We just want to find out more about what's going on with the property itself. Are insurance policies required? How many years of insurance policies and claims need to be provided? Again, the lender may be asking for that. Are soils reports, engineering reports required? Are there environmental reports that are required? What about the ADA documents required? Do we need those? Are government authority documents required? Other documents required? All of these are questions, and it seems very intricate, but when you get into it, then you'll realize that, yep, we do need all of these. Who shall order and provide these environmental assessments? For example, the phase 1 environment site assessment that we had done for this particular building that we sold, the seller paid for the phase 1 and the buyer ended up paying for phase 2. Phase 1 goes in and basically says, hey, it looks like we're okay. It doesn't look like there's anything around the area as far as any gas stations, as far as, what's going on with the prairie dogs across the street, any wires, technical wires that are above any gas drilling. Anything like that is what the phase 1 environment site assessment does. So if it comes across and it's clean, basically, or acceptable to the buyer, then the phase 2 doesn't necessarily need to be invoked. But if they see something and they say, wow, we don't know for sure what's going on over here with these, high tension wires, or with the fracking drill that's going to go in, they would then be the ones typically to pay for that phase 2. Any other environment assessment required? We need to describe those, and we need to ask, again, who's going to pay for those? How many numbers of days are going to be extended for the environmental inspection objection deadline? And who pays for those environmental assessments? Sometimes those phase 1, phase 2 site assessments can take quite some time. They're pretty intricate. I always make sure that we have a good rapport with our local inspectors, and there's a man up here in the northern Colorado area. If you ever come across any of those, you have issues, let me know. He's been the expert in Colorado for years and years. I can pass that on for you. Thanks. Okay, so moving to Colorado probate, I just want to ask if anybody has any questions so far. I know that was a lot of information. Does anybody have any questions before we roll into probate? Nope. Okay, good to see you on here, Alan. So I know I said good morning to everybody else, and I just thought I would just say, hey, I'm so glad you're here too. So Colorado probate, there are 2 types. And again, this is important for us to know because, for example, my best friend's dad just passed away. She's saying, okay, we're going to end up selling my dad's house, Amber, but I'm not sure how we do it. It's not like one of those situations where I can just sign a listing agreement with her, even though she says, I know I'm going to be the executor of the estate, and go, plop a sign in the yard, lockbox on the door, and get rolling with it. I need to find out for sure what's going on with the property to begin with. So first of all, we need to find out, is the property, is Colorado probate, is it going to be intestate that has a will, or is it going to be intestate? So again, testate is where there is a person that is named as the executor in the will. Intestate is without a will, and then the court will appoint someone as the administrator. Now this could take time. So we need to, as real estate brokers, the family is calling us and saying, we want to get this on the market, we want to sell it. It may take more time than what they're thinking. So the executor and or the administrator will manage the estate from the beginning to the end, just so, again, so we know. So the steps, basically, the court will have a personal representative that will be appointed by the court to handle the estate. And that's who our contact person will be in wanting to have them sign any of our listing agreement documents. Any beneficiary, heir, or creditor could apply for that. And what will happen is with that, they would open a probate file in the county court. Now, keep in mind that all across Colorado, we have different counties and they're all very different. And some of them make more sense than others. So again, as per my legal advice from Damian Cox, my attorney, he has said, make sure that you know what you're talking about before you start talking. So call a county, find out what's going on. How do we handle these? How do we handle this? And how do we help our client, the sellers, get this property sold appropriately? Again, we want to advise seller clients to seek legal and tax counsel from probate attorney and their financial planners and or CPAs. In that, make sure you have documentation of that. Please, please, please. It's not an if we get audited, it is a when we get audited. We want to make sure that we have some sort of paper trail. I say paper trail because I'm old school, but electronic trail that shows that we did advise them to seek advice elsewhere. I am not an attorney, nor do I ever claim to be one. And I certainly am not a CPA, nor do I claim to be that either. So I'm just your neighborhood real estate broker that wants to help you get your property sold. And in that light, that's when you send out something similar to that that says, and let's have a list of those attorneys that we've made those connections with. Let's have a list of those CPAs that people have recommended to us. Make sure that we're giving our clients more than 3 so that they don't feel like we're just guiding them into one specific or another. Again, an attorney that has done a phenomenal job for me may or may not do a phenomenal job for the next case, because that could be different. So we want to make sure that we sort of cover our own liability issues and make sure that we have that in place. Inventory of assets. So what's going to happen with the Colorado probate is the personal representative will need to have an inventory of assets. They're going to have all of that listed out. That will be everything from artwork to their furniture, to jewelry, to gold, to what have you. The only one that we can be an expert in is helping them out with their real estate. So if they own a home, their own personal home, and or any investment properties, that's when we can help get involved. That's when we can say, we're going to help you with providing a market analysis. We can give you suggestions on how to prepare the home to get it ready for marketing. We can help you coordinate with estate sale coordinators. We can help you with cleaning contractors, moving companies, packing companies, subcontractors, painters, carpet installers, landscapers, what have you. Again, we also need to keep in mind that if the person has either been a hoarder or they've just not taken very good care of their property, or if the actual person dies in the home, there will be a certain amount of mitigation that will need to happen prior to us being able to actually put it on the market. If we're going to put it on the market, we always, as you all I'm sure know, want to put it in its best light, have it show in its best absolute possible stance before we put it on the market. So keep that in mind. Creditors then have to be paid and or settled before the person can actually close the estate. So again, they can go ahead and have the property on the market, and then they won't be able to actually close out the estate until the properties have sold, they've received proceeds, and any of those creditors have been paid. So even if the homeowner, which passed away, if they had hired somebody to come in and do some renovation work, and they have outstanding contracts with them, and they still have those bills that need to be paid, those must be paid before the actual estate is settled. So again, anybody that's coming in as a service person, they can also, if they had to, put a lien on the property, but hopefully we wouldn't have to get that far, just to have the personal representative be in contact with them and let them know that they will be paid. Accounting of what has come in and out of the estate is what the personal representative will need to provide to the court as well. And that would also include us providing them and making sure that they have their closing documents, giving them the information that they have for the settlement statement, because the court is going to want to see that. And then the personal representative will do the final step, which will be preparing the file paperwork to close the actual estate. Keep in mind too that our brokerage fees in a situation like this is part of the cost that they anticipate paying in settling a probate case. I know here at Radius Agent, we are able to provide some relief and give some additional, percentage discounts and or lesser percentage rates on our commission fees. On this one, I would just tell you, we are professionals in this industry. We bring an extreme amount of value to our clients. So on this particular situation, I would ask them, and I would just say, normally I would give you a 2.5% or a 3 or a 12 or whatever it is. Can't do price fixing. But I would just say, this is something that you will be paying your full attorney's fees. I'm going to be charging a full listing fee. Again, sometimes it may take 6 months in Colorado to actually settle. It could be up to 2 years to actually settle an estate. So keep in mind that we're not going to be able to put this property on the market for 6 months. It may take that full 6 months for the court to actually decide that, yes, it's okay, we can go ahead and do it then. And it may take up to 2 years to actually settle. So the heirs will then receive settlement after the court decides who gets what. And that will be the final say. So at least I hope this kind of gives you a very basic outline of what might be transpiring for some of your clients that will be going through the probate process. And again, I'm sure some of you have dealt with this on a personal level and have much more expertise than I do. So if you want to chime in, I would welcome your information. Okay. So again, if we need to get further information from experts in the field, we would definitely help your clients and send them to probate attorneys. Again, how can we help? The market analysis. We can help prepare the home for sale. This is also where we could actually enlist the help of our Radius, not Aspire, but the Radius Edge. So I'm sorry, that was a typo there. I meant to put Radius Edge on there. So if we needed to enlist them to help us with the contractors that they have already vetted, have them go in and do some of this work for these folks to get it done and get it into show condition so that we can put the property on the market, then we could go ahead and do so. Again, as I mentioned, that we may need to have the home mitigated prior to putting it on the market. We can provide title company referrals. Again, as we're out there in the industry, we are meeting our title representatives. This is where we need to find out who handles this and who are the experts in this. All title companies can handle probate sales. However, there are some that have expert advisors. And so I would ask them to be sure and let us, let's do the homework and find out who they are and get our clients to them. Again, we would need to ask, how is the title, or how was the title held? Was it tenancy and severalty, joint tenants, tenants in common? Is it in a trust? This is all going to make an impact on how the actual property is transferred in title at closing. We also need to let our sellers, clients know that they would need to provide a copy of the cause of death, something from the coroner's office that we would need to have them bring, or the death certificate bring to the closing. They will also need to have a personal representative's deed to transfer with title. So we would need to have that validation documentation from the courts brought to closing so that the closers all know that, yes, this is the person that is the executor of the estate. Yes, they can sign on this. Again, title companies would prefer that we have that quote turned into them as we're turning in the contract, and I would say with us here at Radius and with our compliance division, we would like to have that in our files before you even actually have somebody sign the listing contract. So we know who really does have the ability to sign that contract with us. Again, we need to be able to provide information about the loan, the lender, title representative. We want to know, what about the loan? Are they going to keep it? What are the what kind of a loan does this particular property have on it? What's the interest rate? What are the terms? This is where the estate or the personal representative could actually say, hey, you know what? I might want to keep this. I might not want to keep this. I might want to sell it. If the property has a loan, when the owner dies, then the loan must be paid off. Again, with the state of Colorado, you could go in and negotiate a short sale with this lender. You could say, hey, here's where the property value is. And again, in a short sale, let's say somebody went in and had a reverse mortgage on the property. Again, if somebody was getting a little bit older and they decided to go ahead and do that, we might be upside down in equity. It might be an owner that has gone in and paid above purchase price for this property, and like people are doing in this crazy market right now, and they could have negative equity in the home. So we may have to go in and start negotiating short sales again with these lenders. The heirs can take it and keep the loan and pay on the loan, or they can walk away. They could actually turn over this property and let it go into foreclosure, or they could go ahead and try to sell it. So they actually have three options. They can keep it, they can pay on that loan, and they do not have to actually qualify for the loan since their heir has passed away, or the creditor, if the creditor is the personal representative, they can choose to take this over and make the payments and keep the property. Or they can let it go and say, hey, I can't pay anything. We're just going to let it go into foreclosure. You can negotiate a short sale, or you can actually sell the property. And again, that's where we as agents can go in and help them. So how long do you have to wait to sell the property? I already answered that, 6 months. Depends on if the will is contested or not contested also, because if it is being contested, if somebody says, wait a second, I'm supposed to be the executor. I have it written here, handwritten note from my dad that I'm supposed to be the executor of the estate. Somebody else actually has a will that's written and notarized. We could have a real problem. Depending on the dates of those wills, depending on the dates of the power of attorneys. There's just all sorts of different moving parts in this situation. And again, that's why I say that's where we don't know as brokers. That's where we say, hey, I understand it is a very intricate process, and I would suggest that you get some help, some legal advice. Some resources that I came up with is there is a ColoradoProbateTeam.com. This is a real estate broker that is on YouTube, and he does have some great informational videos. Also, just go in, you can actually Google, again, Kimberly and I were talking about, you can go in and Google some information. But again, I think this is where having our relationships with attorneys is extremely important, so that we can then pass that information on to our clients. Have a list of recommended attorneys, CPAs, and title companies. Okay. Any questions about that? Nope. Sorry, I know I'm long-winded and talking quickly. So selling new developments and new construction. I love this. I was an on-site salesperson for years and years. I do have my certified salesperson designation and have worked with the HBA for several years. And so selling in a new development community gives you more inventory options for your buyers. Plus, it's kind of the latest and greatest, the newest and shiniest of what buyers are looking for. Similar to people looking at cars, they like new. And so the on-site agents also, once they get to know you, they may refer you some resale business. So if somebody walks into their development and they say, hey, I don't have a realtor relationship, I do need somebody to help me sell this house before I can buy this new one. like, you know, if you're top of mind, they may just call you and say, hey, you know, we have so-and-so here, they'd like to buy a new home. Why don't you call Amber? She can list it and sell it for you. I know she does a great job. There you go. So it's also a way for us to gain business. And then on-site agents are typically paid by the builder most of the time. Most of the time they are salary based, and then they're paid small commissions. That's kind of how the builder saves a little bit of money. They'll only pay them a smaller fee up front and a commission. They can typically do commission draws against their small commission plus their salary. This keeps them in the ball game and also keeps them aware of what's going on with the builder. So it gives less opportunity for variations in the builder contract and builder representation. So in that, some developments are listed with brokers, and the commission compensation would then be, I don't know if it's next, what's listed in the MLS. So for example, if, you know, Radius Agent, if we were to go in and be listing agents for a subdivision for ABC Builder, we would then be submitting it into RE Colorado and or up here up north in Iris. We would then still offer the co-op fee as if it were any other listing that we were listing. That would be like a resale property. Time frames might affect your buyers. Right now, especially due to material shortages and or appliances, like right now, if you're ordering a new dishwasher, it could take you 6 months. In the past, we had issues with lumber shortages. I remember when my brother was building, we actually had to call all of our under contract buyers and let them know we had no idea when the lumber packages were going to be showing up. That was when we had some issues with snow and with, you know, weather situations, road closures, for example, like the mudslide on I-70. That's backing up the roadways for drivers to bring through, trucks to drive through materials. So that's a real factor that you want to let your buyers know too, that it could actually extend the closing date dramatically. And the builders, typically in their builder contracts, they will say, we don't know when this might come in, and okay, you, Mr. or Mrs. Buyer, you agree to say that that's okay. Or at a certain point, you could say, hey, no, we want our earnest money back. We're going to move forward and go with a different product. Builders, developers typically affiliate with their own lenders so that they can pass on the savings to the buyer. This for a lender, for a builder is great because they'll go in and they'll negotiate, and they will have their own lender representation there. They'll pass on the savings to a buyer, say like, you know, 0.5% origination fee instead of the full 1%. That gives the builder a little bit more assurance that the buyer will actually close. And also the builder may have an affiliated interest in the company. If it's their mortgage brokerage as well, sometimes I think Richmond Homes will have their own mortgage entity aspect as well. They will get paid a slight bit of a referral fee on that as well. So just keep in mind, though, that builder developers will ask, and they typically will pass on savings to your buyers. So if your buyers are locked in, let's say it's their son that happens to be the loan originator that they wanted to go through, just let them know, you know, hey, this is, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer's son or daughter, aunt, uncle, whatever. They would like to use this person as their mortgage broker, and yet they may not be able to match the same discount or not. You just want to be sure and be aware of it and let your buyers shop that. Most of the time, buyers can use their own lender. However, typically incentives are given to builders. Okay, got that. Showing etiquette. Most developments and listing agents want you to accompany your buyers on the first visit. Some of you will go in and they will allow you to preview the product beforehand and register your buyers, but not always. I've seen situations where some neighborhoods are like, hey, come on in, not a problem. Or I could even call them and say, hey, this is Amber. I've got, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Jones going out this weekend. I'm working with them. I'm holding open house on Sunday. That was the only time they could go through. If I know that listing agent, again, networking, if I've built some rapport up with that listing agent, more than likely they're going to say, oh, that's cool, Amber, I'll register them for you, not a problem. And then they will still honor my agency relationship with those buyers to make sure I get paid. Others I've seen where they're real sticklers. Well, you weren't here on the first visit with, Mr. and Mrs. Martinez, and you weren't here, so you're not getting paid. Unfortunately, it happens. So make sure you know your developments, make sure, and again, if you go to preview them, or sometimes title companies will have continuing education classes at certain developments, get in there, get to know these people that are the on-site folks. Again, you want to just make sure and build up that rapport network so that it helps make your business easier, and they get to know you so they know who's on the other side of the contract representing these buyers as well. The contracts that builders use, builder contracts versus Colorado buy-sell contract. Overall, the Colorado buy-sell contract is designed to protect the buyer. In a builder contract, it is designed to protect the builder. So when you go through and you read those, again, you'll notice that, and especially if you have a buyer agency relationship with your buyers, which I would suggest you do, you're going to want to point out what's different. It may say things like the price of this product may increase up to 4% without even, without the buyer being allowed to void or cancel the contract. You want to make sure that you read the fine print and know what it's saying. This also reminds me of the most recent contract that I read from Zillow. And I know, Alan, I think you and possibly Dane closed on a Zillow property. And so I know you're familiar with that contract. Builder contracts, very much the same. They're going to be written to protect that builder. And unfortunately, with our buyers, sometimes we have to just say, you know what, if you want this house, we have to sign the builder contract. Here's where it is. Again, perfect opportunity for us to make sure that we give them the opportunity to review it with their own attorney and seek their own legal counsel on situations that are different and outside the Colorado buy-sell contract. Because all we are really able to do in the state of Colorado, as you all know, is fill in the blanks. We're not able to actually practice law. Okay, we can move forward. So anybody have any questions or anything about the topics that I covered today? I know it was kind of quick.
Good job. No questions.
Okay.
I just said no questions. Good job.
Oh, thanks, Dane. You're so fabulous. I appreciate your support always. Again, we're here to support you no matter what the topics are. We've just put together this Radius Aspire so that we can touch on those items and topics so you can actually go back and review them at your leisure, and or if you have new agents that are coming on, especially if you're team leaders, to direct them to the Radius Academy so that they can go back and review this and learn more about the Colorado real estate industry.